League's latest release, VIEGO, has hit the rift, and we've been paying close attention to how pros and high elo players have been building him. Multiple super strong builds have surfaced, and today we'll be breaking all of them down so you guys can start dominating with the Ruined King. What do you guys think of VIEGO so far? I've seen him a few times in my games, and it's either popped off or been completely useless, which, to be honest, is pretty standard for a new champ. We'd love to hear your initial thoughts in the comments below. And to stay in the loop with all the new best builds and champs for every patch, don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. So, with all that being said, let's get right into it. For Jungle VIEGO, both Ember Knife and Hailblade work well as starting items, so deciding between them really depends on preference and situation. If playing Bruiser VIEGO, we recommend going for Ember Knife as it will allow you to thrive in those extended fights. If playing Assassin VIEGO, then the extra burst and move speed Hailblade provides synergizes really nicely. If you're dabbling with the solo lane VIEGO, your starting item should be Doran's Blade in easy matchups and Doran's Shield in ranged or more difficult lanes. The best performing core build, and the one being played the most consistently by pros, has been Goredrinker into Blade of the Ruined King and Sterix. The build can work for any role and provides VIEGO with a really nice mix of damage and tankiness. If you want to go full on Bruiser, then you can make a slight variation, swapping Bork out for Sterix and building a Death's Dance third. So far, Faker, Perks, and Scout have all been using the Goredrinker setup for mid lane, whereas Blossom and Canyon have been playing it in the jungle. You're going to notice that almost all the builds we feature will include Blade of the Ruined King as a first or second item. Bork just works so well with VIEGO's kit, since both his Q and ultimate apply on hit effects at 100% effectiveness. If you're playing against other Bruiser champions or tanky comps, then this build will be the most ideal. With the Goredrinker healing and Sterix shield, it allows you to stay in extended fights and really benefit from the consistent % HP damage the champion can deal. VIEGO's Q and passive both have healing effects, and when you combine that with the Goredrinker active and Blade of the Ruined King lifesteal, your sustain is really nuts. A higher DPS setup that can provide you with much more burst threat is Blade of the Ruined King into Kraken Slayer and then Sterix or the Collector. So far, this is one of the best performing builds for Assassin VIEGO. VIEGO's Q and ultimate damage both scale with crit, so Kraken Slayer and the Collector synergize really nicely. This 2-item spike of Bork and Kraken will provide you with way more damage, so in games where you're snowballing, or if you're against a very squishy enemy comp, the build can work wonders. If the enemy comp has a lot of burst themselves, transitioning into Sterix for your third item is a great option. If you want to go all-out damage, then you can pick up the Collector third. It's definitely a little more high-risk, high-reward though, since it leaves you really squishy. This next build is the middle ground in between the Bruiser and Burst setup, being Bork into Triforce and Sterix. This is one of VIEGO's best performing builds in solo queue, but played less frequently by pros at the moment. By a large margin, it's VIEGO's most popular top lane build. The Spellblade proc from Triforce has great synergy with VIEGO's kit, since his Q is on a really short cooldown, allowing you to activate Spellblade whenever it's up. You also get 10% more attack speed from Trinity Force compared to Kraken Slayer. For most champs, this wouldn't really be a huge deal, but considering the heal on VIEGO's passive scales with 250% of his bonus attack speed, it's actually pretty nice. All in all, this build path is really consistent right now and gives VIEGO the perfect mix of burst and tankiness. This next setup is your full-out crit build, consisting of a Galeforce rush into the Collector and Infinity Edge. Outplay and burst are the two major pros to this setup. If you really want to play that Assassin VIEGO, then this is the build for you. Since both his Q and ultimate deal damage based on a % of his crit, your one-shot with this build goes through the roof. Galeforce actually holds the highest win % for any rush item on VIEGO at the time of making this video, so the stats back up its viability. Like the Bork into Kraken setup, this one's great in situations to where you're popping off early and just want that extra solo carry potential. If you're playing mid lane VIEGO up against a skill shot oriented opponent, then the build is even better since the active gives you so much more playmaking potential. And then lastly, the final build we have for you guys is Bork Rush into Immortal Shieldbow and then the Collector. Most notably, Perks has been playing this one on his mid VIEGO. The big strength to this setup is the insane sustain and 1v1 power. The lifesteal is really crazy from both Bork and Shieldbow, and then you also have the healing from his Q and passive, allowing you to outplay 1v2 situations extremely well. It's not going to provide you with as much upfront burst as the previous builds of Galeforce into the Collector, but it does make his extended fight power much stronger. Although the sample size of this build is quite low, it actually holds the highest win % in solo queue out of all the builds we've featured. A couple other late game items to note that are really situational include Death's Dance, Guardian Angel, Wit's End, and Chempunk Chainsword. If you're against a very heavy AD comp, then Death's Dance as a third or fourth pickup can work really well. Guardian Angel is usually the most optimal fourth pickup, especially when against a ton of burst, and then Wit's End as your defensive fourth or fifth item against heavy AP. Chempunk can be completed later on when you run out of item slots, but if you need that healing reduction, you should be sitting on Executioners early in the game. With all the builds that we've covered now, let's quickly run down VIEGO's best rune pages. Press the Attack, Fleet, and Conqueror are all great runes depending on the situation and role you're playing him. For jungle and top, it comes down to either PTA or Conqueror. PTA gives you a bit more upfront burst, whereas Conqueror helps you in extended fights. If you're building a Bruiser VIEGO, then we would 100% recommend you take Conqueror. In games where you plan on going full Assassin, PTA can work best for you there. If you're playing mid lane VIEGO, Conk and PTA can be taken for these same reasons, but Fleet is optimal in ranged matchups where you will get poked out. For the other three runes in the precision tree, take Triumph, Alacrity, and either Last Stand or Coup de Grace. If you're playing Bruiser or Lifesteal VIEGO, then Last Stand is optimal, but if going Assassin, take Coup de Grace. Secondary runes will be from the Domination tree, rolling with Sudden Impact and Ravenous Hunter. Alright guys, there you have it. Those are the 5 different VIEGO builds going around at the moment. To recap, Goredrinker into Bork and Sterix, or Goredrinker into Sterix and Death's Dance are 2 Bruiser builds being played the most by pros. Bruiser variations seem to be the most consistent thus far, so if you want to keep it simple, this would be our #1 recommendation. Bork into Kraken and the Collector provides you with the highest DPS build, but oftentimes picking up that Sterix is going to be more reliable third. Bork, Triforce, and Sterix is the most popular solo queue build over in Korea, so you can't really go wrong with this one. Galeforce, Collector, and Infinity Edge is your all-out snowball burst setup, and then Bork, Shieldbow, and the Collector gives you amazing sustain and extended fight potential. Be sure to experiment yourself and see which build fits your playstyle best. For future videos just like this one, where we keep you guys completely up to date with the best new builds for each patch, don't forget to hit that sub button. Until next time, good luck with your VIEGO and solo queue, and have a great day.